King Charles I, the king who was tried by his own people. How England's forgotten civil war changed the future of freedom. What if I told you, almost 150 years before the American Revolution, an English king was put on trial by his own people, accused not just of bad leadership, but of tyranny, war crimes, and murder. Long before George Washington crossed the Delaware, long before the Declaration of Independence declared that governments exist to protect the rights of the people, England was already fighting a war over those very ideas. And at the center of it all stood one man, King Charles I, Charles Stuart, a king with limited power. Charles I did not rule as an absolute monarch, at least not on paper. English law had long held that the king governed under the law, not above it. Parliament existed to protect the rights and liberties of the people, including taxation, representation, and lawful governance. But according to the charge laid against him, Charles had a different vision. He believed in divine right, that God, not the people, made him king. Parliament, in his view, was an obstacle. Over time, he ruled without it, raised money illegally, imprisoned critics, and ignored centuries-old legal traditions. This wasn't just political tension. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. When the king raised the flag of war. In 1642, Charles did something unprecedented. He raised his royal war standard, a declaration of war, not against a foreign enemy, but his own parliament and people. From Nottingham to Edgehill, Brentford to Newbury, Leicester to Naseby, England descended into civil war. Entire towns were burned, trade collapsed, families were torn apart. Tens of thousands of ordinary people, farmers, craftsmen, fathers, sons, were killed. By the time the fighting spread across England, Wales, Ireland, and even the seas, the country was bleeding itself dry. And when Charles lost, he refused to stop. A king who wouldn't accept defeat. Even after surrendering in 1646, Charles secretly plotted to regain power. He negotiated with foreign powers. He encouraged rebellions. He authorized his own son, the future Charles II, to continue the war. In 1648, England exploded again. To his enemies, this was the final proof. Charles Stuart would never rule under the law. Peace was impossible while he lived. The unthinkable happens. Then came one of the most shocking moments in Western history. In January 1499, the English Parliament did what no nation had ever done before. They put their king on trial for treason against his own people. Not treason against the crown, but treason against the nation. He was found guilty of being the author, occasioner, and continuer of a brutal civil war that destroyed lives, ruined the economy, and violated the rights he had sworn to protect. Days later, Charles I was executed. The axe fell, and with it fell the idea that a king could rule without consequence. Why this matters to America? To modern Americans, this story should sound familiar because the ideas that justified Charles I's execution, government exists for the good of the people, leaders are accountable under the law, power comes from the nation, not divine right. These ideas would later shape the U.S. Constitution, the impeachment process, and the belief that no one is above the law. The English Civil War was not just England's tragedy. It was the first crack in absolute monarchy and a blueprint for modern democracy. A forgotten revolution. America remembers 1776, but nearly 134 years earlier, England asked a terrifying question. What happens when a ruler becomes the enemy of his own people? And for the first time in history, a nation answered.